Hey people, how are you? We are live. My name is Matt Phillips. I'm the creator of OneChatLive.com, and this is episode 170 of the Sports Therapy Association podcast. Recorded, as always, live every Tuesday, normally at 8 o'clock on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel. Although tonight, because of the just fame of my three guests who I'll be bringing up shortly, we're also going live to the Born to Move Facebook page and also to the ST School Facebook page. Hopefully, technology in hand, hopefully. If you are joining us live from either the Facebook pages or YouTube, then feel free to put something in the comments just to show us that it's working. You can say, hi, I am on the Born to Move Facebook page. When you do join us live, then any comments you make, I can bring up onto the screen. So it's a nice chance to flash off your logo for your business and just to hang out with like-minded soft tissue therapists. It's a little bit quiet in the live lounge at the moment, which is fine, but I'll just move on and just think I'm just being impatient because normally I'm about 10 minutes late. Anyway, so we are continuing our countdown to Therapy Expo 2023, which for those of you who aren't aware is happening at the NEC Birmingham this November, the 22nd and the 23rd, bringing you on the podcast guest speakers who are going to be presenting in the STA Update Theatre, which is the Sports Therapy Association Update Theatre. Last week in episode 169, if you missed that, I had the pleasure of talking with Angela Jackson, who's an internationally respected educator, working particularly with younger athletes and female athletes. And Angela is going to be in the STA Theatre at Therapy Expo at 9:15 a.m. on day 2, presenting how to integrate neurocognitive approaches into a rehabilitation setting. If that title confuses you at all, then a good idea would be to listen to the podcast, which obviously is available on all podcast apps. And also, if you want to watch the video, then you can watch it on YouTube. It actually, to tell you the truth, if you're a therapist, then unwrapping that title would be a great idea because Angela breaks it down, as always, wonderfully. And essentially, it's about a potentially very important missing link in our rehab for athletes and non-athletes in terms of their neurocognitive ability. It just means that when you are injured, then the messages to and from your brain are inhibited, become a little bit smudged. And unless you do specific exercises to improve and clean up those neural pathways, then you're probably missing part of that very important recovery. And this is why, potentially, as the research is now showing, pre-injury is such a massive indicator or it's so prevalent in re-injury. And that could be the missing link or one of the missing links. So yeah, great episode. And once again, thank you to Angela Jackson for giving up her time. And yeah, if you're interested, then come along to Therapy Expo day 2, 9:15 a.m. Anyway, a few people are entering the live lounge now. Nikki Mansfield is here, and I'm just bringing up Nikki's message onto the screen. Evening all. I haven't read it now. Do I read it before? Yeah, Nikki's fine. It's always PG. There's only one thing better than tonight's upcoming Motley Crue of clinicians, the Motley Crue plus wine. Does that mean she's at home listening to Vince Neil and, I don't know, Motley Crue? Okay. Facebook Live is working great. Nikki, thanks for letting us know that. Like I say, if anybody is joining us live, then feel free to ask questions directly to our guests. Tracy Stevens is in the house as well. Tracy Stevens says, hi everyone. Hi Tracy, thanks for joining us. Right, so back to tonight. In this episode, my guests waiting patiently in the lobby are as follows in no particular order. James Earls and Owen Lewis of Born to Move, who will be giving a theory and practical hour workshop. Yes, you heard it right. It's a whole hour in the STA Theatre. That's going to be on day 1 at 4 o'clock at Therapy Expo 2023. And the title of their presentation or practical workshop is going to be Understanding Functional Links to the Lower Limb. Both James and Owen have been on the podcast before, and together they offer hugely popular courses. We always get great feedback from STA members who go on the courses. It's just evidence informed in the best meaning of the word, which I'm sure we'll discuss later on. Very highly spoken of, so it's an absolute pleasure to be able to give an hour to these guys at Therapy Expo, and they're going to be also across other places in Therapy Expo, which we'll talk about now. If you're interested in listening to James and Owen, then you can check out episodes 109, 115, 140, and 158. That's it. That's how much we love them. 4 episodes. I think they're sitting at the top at the moment. Yeah, and then you'll find interviews with both James and Owen. We are also joined by another fantastic educator and friend of the STA School, who is none other than Anna Maria Mazzieri, who's the director of the ST School of Soft Tissue Therapy, and also created the very popular hands-on hub area at Therapy Expo. And we'll be particularly talking about the hands-on hub. If you're not aware, it was there last year, which was the inaugural reception of this hands-on hub, and it was a fantastic success for reasons you will hear very shortly. And it's great to hear that it's back this year, just next to the STA Theatre, actually. So, I mean, that's going to be your place for most therapists to hang out. It's going to be a wonderful corner of the event. As well as talking about their individual involvements with Therapy Expo this year, Anna, James and Owen are also going to discuss the story, which is a plan they have devised, a cunning plan, to help therapists who attend Therapy Expo find common meaning and important principles in all the talks and workshops they're going to see across the 2 days. Because last year it was just a bit manic. People rushed around trying to see as many presentations as possible, and a lot of it just became unjointed, and it was just like too much information. So the idea this year, and we're going to talk about this with Anna Maria and the guys, is let's connect these talks together. Why are we going? What are we hoping to come out with? What are we listening for? So that's the idea. Right, long intro, but that will let you know what's coming up if you listen to the podcast. And like I said, if you do want to join us live next time, then just come along to YouTube Tuesday at 8 o'clock. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up James Earls and Owen Lewis of Born to Move, and also Anna Maria Mazzieri of the ST School and Hands-On Hub. There we go. I'll just wait till I had all three of you together. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Matt.
How are you? Well, if you listen to the podcast, then you're missing out, really, because it's just like royalty, all in a row. It's just like, it's amazing. It's really great to see you three together, and really looking forward to hearing how you guys are working together for Therapy Expo this year. So remember, just to remind people, Live Lounge, I'm going to be concentrating on these three. Okay, so if you've got comments, then just put them in there. I've told these three, if they see something interesting in the comments, then to direct my attention to it. So feel free to ask questions. Sarah Jones says, good evening, looking forward to Expo. Fantastic. Nicholas Wheeler is in here as well. Good to see you. Glenn Murphy is here as well. So great people coming to Live Lounge. Right then, good to see people. Thanks so much for giving us your time. How are you all, first of all? You all good? In any particular order? You can't nod on a podcast, doesn't work.
Yes, very true. I'm trying to mute myself because my dogs have just come back from their walk. So very soon you're going to hear them, as you all know. So.
Oh, wonderful. No, we live for that. Give your dog a name.
Sula and Flo.
Sula and Flo. Wonderful. Looking forward to them joining us as well. Fantastic. Right. So Therapy Expo, not far away now. Has anyone done the maths? What are we looking at?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. That's come by very quickly, hasn't it?
Weeks till Christmas.
Incredible. So before we get into that, as I always say, I'm hoping that particularly some of the listeners to the podcast, the kind of 2,500, 3,000 of you, I'm hoping that they don't know you, because that's the idea. Otherwise, we're just patting each other on the back and just confirming what we know, which is useful as well. But so would you be so kind? Maybe we'll start with Anna Maria, just to give us a little elevator pitch breakdown of who you are and how you got to the education you provide today.
So I am Anna Maria Mazzieri. I am a clinician and an educator, very passionate about hands-on therapy and everything that hands-on in terms of manual therapy and massage can provide for the person's health and well-being in all its entirety. And I provide qualification courses in soft tissue therapy, which is a massage and movement type of qualification, and also CPD courses. And I hate introducing myself, so I'm just going to go
and
sit back.
So that's for the ST School, in case people are looking for that. Available on social media, I think quite well done, actually. It's at the ST School everywhere, which is wonderful. So yeah, people can look you up there, and also the website, the 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐻𝐻. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Owen, you were next on my working around. So Owen, could you let people know who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think straight away, like Anna said, I don't like talking about There is
also modest.
theme of emerging already about that, because it's like, well, I don't really care about me. It's not that important or that exciting, really. Just another life. Fundamentally, though, what I am passionate and excited about is the anatomy, is the biomechanics. How does that, transfer into clinical world, which is really where I live and breathe every day. And it was through that kind of passion and excitement that you can probably already hear. I get very buzzy about all of this straight away. That collaborated with James to come up with this idea of Born to Move and the whole Born to Move package, which is a whole kind of group of workshops, of online education, webinars, as well as the books that James just seems to be pouring out. It's like, oh my God, another one. I have that. I'm just to compete with the guy. My one is coming out at the beginning of next year, I hope. Should be. So look out for that. Just a nice little plug in there.
What's that going to be on? You did tell me before when you were on the show before. What is it?
Called Core, and it's going to be about the core, whatever the hell that is. So, but I won't go into that because it's a bigger topic that we need to. But yeah, that's kind of me.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that. Wonderful. And James, that leaves you.
Yep. Well, thank you, Matt, for the opportunity, for the invitation, and also thank you, Anna Maria, for helping organise not just tonight but also for the work at the Therapy Expo. Our relationship with Anna Maria goes back to 2009, 2010. I think she was gracious enough to invite me down to Exmouth to teach an anatomy twins workshop. This is when I kind of started teaching in the UK. I trained in bodywork and manual therapies over in Belfast, and then started getting involved with the anatomy twin school. I started seeing some of the limitations of the bodywork stories that we were telling ourselves, and I got excited. Partly out of the frustration of my inability to answer students' questions, because I wanted to be able to answer the questions about movement and what's anatomy, and that led me to a guy called Gary Gray. I did a functional movement training with him, and since then, that was back in 2010 probably, that I started a kind of relationship with the Gray Institute, and that's informed a lot of my work in the last 14 years. God. Ooh. So I'm feeling my age. And that's trying to blend movement and manual therapy, and I have an interest in evolutionary and comparative anatomy, and I kind of geek out on that and get excited about the difference between our pelvis and the chimpanzee pelvis and shoulders, and why gibbons can swing through trees and why we can't, and why we shouldn't be kind of brachiating, and all the stories that we have on social media, and kind of looking at the natural approach to movement and what is natural and what's unnatural, and what are we designed for? Why are we this shape? Those are the things that the questions that get me excited.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, you can hear the passion in both your voices. It's wonderful. It's so infectious, and probably part of the reason for your amazing education. And it's nice pointing out as well, because Anna Maria, you were entertaining and hosting guests like back in 2010.
Yes,
far ahead of their time. I mean, you had me early, way back, which was just revolutionary. You had these guys. So I mean, you've been a conduit of better, more evidence-informed practice for years. So it must be really nice now that some of the stuff you were trying to spread 10 years ago is actually got a name for it now. We've got the biopsychosocial model, something we can call it something instead of just here's something new. Must be quite nice for you to see it coming around.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was lovely actually to make those connections, then to be part actually of, I would call it the movement, those questions all the time with the lecturers and the speakers, and this continued questioning. None of us are happy or ever happy in terms of there are no answers to any of the questions. There are no answers to the question. There can only be more questions, but at least now there is. It's great to be a very great amount of people that are asking those questions, and we are a bit more uncertain together. So it's lovely.
Fantastic. I think I might actually, I'm going to deviate from my script a little bit that I kind of put together. And I want to go straight into this because we've heard about you, and very much already a theme has been learning, evolving, not knowing the answers, and all of us have done this we were doing it 10 and more, in James's case, back in the 1800s or something, but we've been doing it for a long time. And finally now, I want you to tell me, Anna Maria, where this idea, the story came from. And I'm wondering whether you've done it because you feel that now is the time where therapists can actually relate to it, whereas 10 years ago it would have just gone over people's heads. Have things changed, which means
no, it was just because it was it is just having one of the amazing conversation with James there, and we were talking about general things and talking about, always I said, it would be nice to have, always felt, I think probably we're all feeling the same, that, sometimes when we go to conferences or events, the knowledge, we all absorb a lot of knowledge, soon to be forgotten or soon to be packed away, because it's so much that we cannot actually give it a bit of a connection. And already, the hands-on hub was shaping up, the talks in the hands-on hub was shaping up, and I wanted to put some of you in connection, because I'm very, as I always say to you all, I'm very privileged. I know you all individually, so I know all your work, and I could see from an outsider how certain things linked. And then I was talking to James, and James has this absolute way with words. It's just, to me, it's just poetry. None of you have read any of James's books. You're missing something, because he writes like poetry. And he says, yes, son. I said, he felt the same, that we're missing a common thread, a story. And so when he said the word story, it's just to me, it all of a sudden just made sense. That's what we're missing, this common, consistent story between different talks, between different presentations, a story that then can help the attendee to make a tiny little bit more sense of what they have learned. So it's not me, it's actually was something that came out through conversation, with James. And I love the word story. We're thinking story journey, but actually the story is something to me quite powerful, quite narrative wise. And I think that's where we want to bring it. It is narrative wise. So
brilliant,
that's
great idea.
How we came across.
And this is a really important message, I think, that I want to make for people who went to Therapy Expo last year will have noted that the quality of presentations has just become really much more relevant. It was really good last year. Since they started this advisory panel, which people like Anna Maria have been on, and Gary Benson, founder of the STA, and other people as well, since they've been asking therapists or educators, what do you think we should be giving here, as opposed to just making a commercial driven decision, it's just shot up. But the result of that last year was a lot of therapists running around, heart rate at like 200 plus, thinking, oh my God, I've got to make it to so-and-so, because there was so much choice. And I think all of us thought at the end of last year, we were shattered, because there was just stress in the air. And we thought, this seems to be a really good reaction to that, to help therapists realize that it's not just a case of going to as many presentations as you want, because you'll finish thinking, I can't remember any of that. So the idea of this, when I heard you talking about this, and let's make a connection between it all, so people know what they're trying to get out of this, then it's just a great idea, lovely idea. And of course, it came from James's mouth, obviously. So let's talk briefly about, before we go more into that, I just want to make sure that we have a look at what you guys are presenting, and then maybe we can talk a little bit more to the story and how these talks fit into it. So let's just bring up, if people don't know what we're talking about in terms of the different theatres at Therapy Expo, I'm just going to bring this onto the page. So when you go to therapyexpo.co.uk, as whoever's been looking for the presentations, they will know, then what happens is you've got kind of different theatres. Therapy Expo has, I don't know how many people now go through the door over 2 days. I think it's like 10,000 or something. It's incredible. And you've got at least, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 different theatres or something. Within those theatres, A, B, and C, you've got the STA Theatre, which has got 2 days of presentations, and you've also got the hands-on hub, I'm putting this on the screen now just in case you listen to the podcast. And then there's other theatres, so it's a nice way of organising it, but there will be a lot of running around from theatre to theatre in order to see who you want to see. For example, then, as far as our guests tonight go, in the STA Theatre at 4 o'clock on the Wednesday, we're going to have James and Owen doing an hour practical session, which we're very excited about. So people actually get standing up and doing some, because we kind of, actually we'll talk about this in a second, you tend to learn a bit more when you're actually doing things, don't you, and moving. And so I'm going to ask James and Owen to not give it all away, but just give an idea, a synopsis of what people who attend this Understanding Functional Links to the Lower Limb will be getting from coming to this hour presentation. Either of you could jump in there. Let's give Owen a chance. Go on, Owen. What's the idea?
Right. Yes, I woke up for a moment there. So yeah, it's one of those ones that I'm really looking forward. Oh, I'm looking forward to be honest. I mean, you know, Therapy Expo there's a reason that you go along in general. That I certainly would be going anyway. I just want to listen. It's such a goldmine of ideas and there's so many things that can sort of spin from the whole experience. But yeah, we're doing this lovely little double act with James. Talk about imposter syndrome. I mean, my gosh. But I know that, you know, the reality of presenting is dealing with imposter syndrome. That's just kind of one of those wonderful realizations I had a while ago. I'm like, okay, so I've got to get over that one every time. But really, we're going to be playing around in a funny way with perspective. So I'm going to be kind of from a kind of top-down driven kind of perspective of things, really with more of a sort of focus on let's say the pelvis and the hip and all that kind of element. And how does the pelvis and the hip, how does that generate differences in the foot? And then James is going to tell you more about the foot, obviously, because he wrote a rather good book on the foot, Understanding the Human Foot. And it's just kind of playing with ideas within this. So, you know, like how come a pelvic torsion like to the right could explain that the left foot is pronated? Yeah. You know, so the pelvis is causing the poor alignment of the foot, right? And therefore the, let's say, plantar fasciitis in the left foot. And we got to be able to predict that. That's true. But if we then, you know, focus all our attention in that scenario with the foot, we start working on their arches and lifting them and orthotics and exercises and all the rest of it, and we will fail because the result that, you know, in that pattern, it's actually coming from the pelvis down. But if I just reverse that story, here's the story again. If I reverse that story, and we have another failure, yeah, and this failure would be, well, actually, you know, someone has pelvic floor problems, incontinence, lower back pain, something like that. Ooh, plane going over in my house. And we would fail if we focused all on the pelvis, if actually the foot is driving up through into the pelvis. So it's playing around with these interreactions and being able to therefore predict the interventions that we have or that we can give each time. So that's a lot of the stuff that we're going to be looking at from a perspective, you know, change of perspective within all of this this whole area. It's such a big area. Yeah. So and then luckily I'm going to be working alongside James during that hour. So all the questions that I will throw out there that will say, well, wait a minute, we need to know more about the foot. Well, James is sitting there as this, you know, immense resource, so we can ask him to say, well, actually, this is what's happening in the foot. And okay, well, this is what's happening in the pelvis, and we can have hopefully this kind of to and fro between the two of us, between our experiences and expertise.
Fantastic. James, is that a fair summary of what's going to be going on there? Or
I think an excellent summary, except for the resource in the corner. I think Owen touched briefly on the mechanics and alluded to the story. And a big part of for me, the story of what we're going to present is going to be getting the language for that story. because I know we're going to be, the presentation is going to be very embedded within the biomechanics. And there is so many other aspects that we could be talking about. And I think a lot of the frustration and a lot of the confusion that's kind of out there between therapists and between researchers and others, commentators, is because there's not a clear language for the interactions that happen. And as much as we can do in the hour, by giving very practical, very immediate examples of everything that Owen just mentioned in terms of the different positions of the pelvis and how that relates to the feet and vice versa, is being able to clearly language and experience it and thereby translate it, and therefore have that power within kind of all levels of being able to touch it, being able to see it, being able to feel it, being able to understand it. And that's the end goal of the hour. It's a lot to ask, but in my view, if we've achieved that, if you've felt it, you've seen it, and you have the language for that, then that's embedded more strongly. Because part of the conversation that I had with Anna Maria, it was around my own frustrations of being an attendee at conferences and events like Therapy Expo, where one gets really excited because there are so many great presentations, so many great presenters, so much fantastic information, but you go from A to B to C to D, and it's so rapid and so disparate. And you go from a shoulder, you go to a neuromuscular, you go to biopsychosocial evidence informed, and it's hard to make the connections between all of those three, because and it's no presenter's fault, it's no organizer's fault. It's just that's the way in which the organizers and events tend to just have come about. And we wanted to kind of change that and encourage a kind of thread of continuity, so it's much easier for the attendee to go, okay, just kind of to relax a little bit and say, okay, there is going to be some degree of connection between these presentations. And so in ours, we're going to very much focus in around the language of the biomechanics and kind of get that embedded in order that we can tell a story of the mechanics and the relationships and have that as part of the bio within the psychosocial model.
Very nice. Sounds great. I'm
Yeah,
going to mention, before I go to Anna though, I'm just going to mention like a couple of the other presentations you're doing, and then I'm going to ask Anna to basically say, what is it about these type of presentation that enthuses you to create the hub, to create the story? So to give you people out there an idea of what else Owen and James are up to, Owen is going to be in the Hands-on Hub on the Thursday at 9:15 a.m. talking about philosophy of care, reflecting towards clinical excellence, which is something I want to poke out a little bit later on, because that's just a magnificent new angle which a lot of people, therapists, soft tissue therapists would not even dream of doing for CPD. We've also got James inside the Hands-on Hub, who's going to be doing oh no, hold on. Oh yes. No. Owen's doing philosophy of care, reflecting on clinical excellence, and what's James doing in the Hands-on Hub?
James is doing toe extension.
Of course, the big
powerhouse
toe.
of
Yes.
of 𝐓𝐡. The
one.
big toe exploring its form and function with
it.
a focus on efficiency in human gait.
And then also outside of the Hands-on Hub and outside of the STA Theatre, then both of you are involved in the other theatres as well, doing different presentations. So what is it about Owen and James, Anna Maria, that enthuses you to create the hub and this story? What is it that you... James hates people talking about how good is he sitting there shaking his head going red on a podcast, which is... But yeah, what is it you love? Why are these people so great? Why do you fall at the feet of James and Owen, worshipping every step they take?
Well, so each of you actually, so when it's a no-brainer or to ask to be part of the Hands-on Hub. First of all, the Hands-on Hub is the translation of evidence, what an evidence-informed progressive approach to hands-on therapy, hands-on and movement therapy looks like in clinical practice. We wanted somewhere where the attendee could understand what the theory looks like, this embodiment of knowledge. And it's a no-brainer to ask. I mean, Owen is somebody that I just very more recently are starting to knowing and appreciating. But James, I've been a fan of James' works for many, many years. So, and then you, Matt Phillips, because, for me, again, you are another great educator, and all of you, and also the other two that are part of the story, which is John Scriven and Amy Testa. And all of you already, interestingly enough, had your own ideas for the presentation at the Hands-On Hub. And actually, when I went to look at them all and discussing, I wanted a link to put them together, the link didn't came after. The presentations were there already. For me, it was easy because I know all of you. So I could see that actually each of the presentation represented the whole presentations together. There was already a consistent message there. And the consistent message was a holistic, integrated, modern approach to care, including the philosophy of care, including the critical thinking, including the evidence-informed. I was the privileged one because I could see it from the outside, because I knew them all. So, and what I loved, and we did a podcast with James years ago about, apologies, welcome to my dog, Sula. Sula, yeah. So what I am very frustrated often that on the BPS model of health and care, the biomechanical or biomedical aspect of it, especially the biomechanical, I think it's always been misinterpreted. I dare to say misunderstood. In fact, I think biomechanics is misunderstood. So when you look at biomechanics, it's not the black and white like we thought. It's an integrated system, and to me, the bringing back the understanding of the integration between the different aspects was important. So all your talks, actually put them all together, that's what a great client journey looks like within movement and hands-on. So to be honest, it was already there, the thread. It's when James said the word story that highlighted all those links.
Cool. So someone of your experience notices this, and the idea now is to help other therapists to notice this is actually going on. And someone might go, oh yeah, I didn't realize that before. Of course it is. Yeah. And to be able to link that, and maybe even choose their talks according to kind of like what area of that they want a bit more information in or something. So to get the overall picture. Fantastic. Okay, so you kind of boiled it down to 5 principles, didn't you?
Yeah, well, we all actually, we again, really interesting, because we all self-regulate, I think, eventually. And we all, when we met up and said what should have been the principles of, that we very much care for within, the philosophy of care, or within the approach to care. And we all said the principle that actually very much reflected the talks. So the overall principle that encompasses them all is heterarchy, which is a word I didn't even know. Thank you, Owen, for suggesting it, because that to me is just all of a sudden the word heterarchy again opened up that making sense of this integrated interrelationship between the different systems in the body, between the different the interrelation between us and the client. There is no hierarchy. There is no hierarchy between the nervous system and the musculoskeletal system. There is no hierarchy between biomechanics and psychological. There is not. We are, and James always used to say that we are a person that walks. So we are. This the entireties of a soul, and the word hierarchy represent the kind of holistic
Brilliant.
approach, which
Let's excuse me for coughing. Owen, so I reckon a lot of our listeners will be familiar with hierarchy. It's something which they've probably read in different circumstances, but maybe you could summarize, why is it useful? Why would it be useful for people going to Therapy Expo to understand, maybe before there or whilst they're there, that we need to move away from the idea of a hierarchy in the human system and embrace this new word, which is fair enough, is a word we're not can't even say half the time. But yeah, why do we move from a hierarchy to a heterarchy? What is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, hierarchical systems are everywhere. From society, big picture sort of stuff. It's often a hierarchical system, and within the clinical environment, if we have a hierarchical system, then we're more, that will affect the way that we interact. So when I'm working with my client, if I am in a hierarchical system, then I, the practitioner, know best. Yeah, that is the classic sort of top-down driven situation. Now, if I know best, I have to know everything. And that's difficult because I don't, and nobody does. So, now we've got this interesting interplay of interrelationships between me and my client. Interested in the fact that, so if we look at, one of these wonderful questions, why does my client not do their homework, not do their exercises? Perhaps that is a direct result of the fact that I know best and I'm telling you to do your homework, just like teacher said, and many people, I certainly did, rebel. We say, I don't want to do my homework, I'm not going to do it. That'll show him. In other words, we've got dissonance between those two people. And exactly the same thing can happen when we start to consider the body, the system that we call human. Right? If we go into a hierarchical system, we start saying, well, the psoas is more important than the deltoid. So I'm going to work on the psoas, or the fascial system. That's the most important thing. That's my bias talking. So everyone who walks in gets work on the fascial system. Oh, but hold on a minute. Maybe they don't need that. Maybe it's just that, again, that hierarchy that is changing, affecting exactly what I'm doing, has a real impact in what I'm doing and the way I'm seeing clients' assessments and so on. Change that relationship, change that into a heterarchy, in other words, much more even situation. From, again, big picture, look at society. It would be where we can all govern and be governed. The Conservative Party, I think, have recently tried that with all their prime ministers, but anyway, that's a whole different point.
Yeah.
But that changes the whole interrelationship between client, practitioner. It changes the relationship of what is the most important system, what is the most important area in which I'm going to work. It's going to be based on the client that's coming in and what they're asking for. What's the most important part of that of that interaction?
Yeah, I very recently, Owen, I was on one of the many forums. Somebody said, but they're talking about massage and touch. So yes, muscles are just something like, they said, it's like a piece of meat, a piece of dead meat, something very disparaging. It's all about the skin. And I thought, oh my God, and we reached the point in which we are actually literally saying things. So are we reducing the person that we are interacting with or we are having an encounter with to the muscles is just a dead because I would say yes, a muscle is just dead meat that it's only activated by the nervous system. And I think, oh my God, and those are the same people that they are trying to bring forth a more neurocentric approach to care, or neurocentric approach to mechanics of massage. And I think there is no one explanation, if there ever is an explanation, which is superior than another. This is what the word heterarchy. We are an interacting system interacting within ourselves and with the environment. You know, that really just sorry, I have to say, just
That's fine.
boiled my heart, boiled my blood.
No, I'm excited to sort of help Owen introduce the concept and the word, because as soon as we become aware of the idea, the concept, the almost the value of a heterarchy, it's like the body and the systems are they're hierarchical. It was like there's no predominance. There's no one is more important than any other. There's the old story of the brain, the mouth, the heart, the lungs, and the anus all having an argument over who was the most important in the body, and they all play games with one another. There is no that can't happen. It's like it may be for the client that's presenting with us that one system is more important within their presentation, but I need to come to my client without being locked into the bias that it is all about the nervous system or the fascial system or the muscular system or the digestive system or the whatever, pick your bias of the month. I need to be as open-minded as I can be, and as soon as we do that, I think it's a challenge to therapists. It's also a challenge to many of the schools that are very embedded within the singular approach. So I'm excited to start that conversation and to kind of get it out there.
Fantastic. 1 of 5, big principle. We're going to move on, but that's like one thing for people, hopefully listeners, to make a little note of that. Maybe do a little Google search. What's the difference between a heterarchy and a hierarchy, and see how it can apply to so many areas: your relationship with your client or person you're working with systems in the body, with so many different areas it can be applied to. Interesting. I just saw people drop out, and apparently we've lost YouTube. So sorry, people watching on YouTube, you can't hear me now. But that's hey, I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, we've still got the people on Facebook, so that's fine. We might leave YouTube for a while. Let's move on to the next principle, if that's okay, which integrated anatomy is what you decided, Anna Maria. Maybe you can expand on that.
I leave James to explain that.
Oh, okay, James, over to you.
I don't know. You're down for me.
It's down. Yeah.
You're up there. It's like celebrity squares, isn't it?
Exactly. Willie Rushton. Oh, that takes me back.
Yeah, we're both showing our age, Matt.
I know, totally read it.
References. Integrated anatomy. I struggle to find a terminology that I'm settled with or happy with in terms of getting the kind of the hierarchical principles into our anatomy, the description of our anatomy. What excites me is being able to describe the reality of movement. So we had a conversation earlier, Anna Maria, you mentioned the idea of biomechanics, and biomechanics it's not as useful as we thought it could or should be. And I think it's because, in my mind, biomechanics comes out of clinical anatomy. And I think we've all studied clinical anatomy. I think that was the wrong starting point. There are so many other types of anatomy. There's functional anatomy and comparative anatomy, developmental anatomy, evolutionary anatomy, and they're all much more useful for our purposes. But we've, as a profession, worldwide, I think we've gone to clinical anatomy because that's easily replicated and easily examined. And what I kind of try to get with the idea, the concept of integrated anatomy, it can also play with the idea of tensegrity anatomy. It's just the reality of what happens whenever you make a normal movement, what happens through the rest of the system. So, clinical anatomy would tell us, well, the deltoid abducts the shoulder. It's like, yeah, but how many of us actually do that until we're doing an orthopedic assessment, and then we get into a different discussion of the validity of the orthopedic assessment, because they're reductive, and that's because they came out of this clinical anatomy, and clinical anatomy is just one tool that has been given this kind of hierarchical, kind of put on a platform kind of place, because we think that's the way we should be studying anatomy. I don't think we should. I think we should be starting with the reality of the body, make simple movements, explore your body, feel the reality of what happens as you move. And that's what I mean by integrated anatomy. It's the reality of normal everyday movement. And most of that is explainable, explorable. Again, I go back to the vocabulary. Once we have the terminology in our hands and in our minds and in our eyes particularly, and I think clinical anatomy doesn't give us the tools to do that. And I think we need to really reevaluate how we learn, how we teach anatomy. And I think we've talked about it before, and Matt's on different things. I think the beginning, the starting points are wrong for the way that we try to learn how we move in the world. So we'll start not with clinical anatomy and reduction. Start with actually how do we move? Just look at the movement and build from there. So kind of build from the bigger picture inward. Then we can understand the anatomy rather than having to learn it. That's
excellent. And I think that's an important point, which I like kind of repeating to listeners, that it's not that we're having to throw everything we've learned out. You know, it's not that it's suddenly, oh, they're just trying to sell us a new course and everything's changed, because it's a great reason to put up a wall, isn't it? Sometimes people just reject it because they think, oh, another person telling me I'm doing it all wrong. It's significant shift, but in reality, it's just a tweak of what we're doing and what we're looking at and how we're weighting things out. So this is something, I guess, which will become really apparent in your practical in the STA Theatre, I guess, and also in the big toe one as well, isn't it? It's just changing the lens we use to look at how people are moving and things. Exciting, great. I'm going to move along because it is 8:47. I definitely want to get all these 5 principles out, and it will leave a bit of a hook as well for people who are debating on what to look at in Therapy Expo. Let's move to the next principle. Is 3 of 5 principles which make up the story to connect different presentations at Therapy Expo. And number 3
is natural movement. So John Scriven will introduce his talk will introduce the natural movement principle, which is where, you know, the way he describes this is traditional movement skills that we have evolved to do because of natural environmental pressures. We have actually largely forgotten them because obviously because modern age has moved away from, there are not all those pressures anymore. However, the need for those movements, they're still there. And the way he describes it, so there is this kind of mismatch within how we have evolved to move and the environment where we move in, that it removes some of those needs. And it's going to look at what is natural movement. You're going to look at another word that I quite like is physical literacy. And there is not, you know, he said, and I want to own back the word move well, John was saying, and I like that. I said, because actually move well, it doesn't mean that there is one way, there is not an ideal way of moving, but a way of moving that is created. But when there is this heterarchy or interplay between environment, biomechanics, psychological, emotion, social, where everything comes together, when there is this matching of all of them for the particular task, particular need of the person at the time, that is moving well. Efficiency of movement, yes, it can be anatomical efficiency, but it can also be moving efficiently for that particular task. Here we are not talking about pain. Could we relate it to pain? Absolutely. But this is not a discourse for pain at the moment. Here we're talking about movement more. And but say, you know, how would that relate to pain? I am very, you know, to me, follow quite a lot of dispositionalism where there are risk factors. If some of those movements are more overloading than others, if some of those movements are done in a situation, in an environment where there actually there is no efficiency for those movements, can they eventually become risk factors that together with other psychosocial risk factors can be part of the person's experience of pain, or can be part of the person's nociceptive drive? Absolutely, it could be. You know, my sense is it is. But at the moment, the discussion is more about movement, and this natural movement is about going back it links very well with James's one, because actually, how are we designed to move, and when is that? How can we match that with what our needs are? So we own in the word "move well."
I want to be devil's advocate a little bit, and I'll
Please
ask
do.
James this as well, because I know, and even I feel it. I think when we had a discussion, the word natural is kind of abused quite a lot, isn't it, by therapists? We got this idea, I mean, it's a fallacy in itself, isn't it? It's appeal to nature or something, where you think that Mother Nature's looking after you, and that's why we should eat everything that Mother Nature produces, and we should go back to walking with no shoes on at all because it's natural. But once we realize that nature doesn't actually care about the human species, hence things like tsunamis and earthquakes and people born with congenital diseases and death, then we can move away from this idea that the more natural something is, the better. So when I hear natural movement, I'm thinking of that kind of era where suddenly everyone was told to walk like a crocodile and jump on their belly and kind of be these animals and stuff. And people were being told to do things which they're never going to have to do in real life, and two, is probably causing injuries because people were getting very enthusiastic about it and pouncing around and kind of doing all this stuff. So what's the difference between maybe that antiquated idea of natural movement with what we're talking about now? I mean, Anna Maria's kind of said it, but I want you to explain it further to show the distinction, James.
To me, so thank you. For me, it's yeah. I would argue like yourself to try and get away with from the imposed stories. So crawl like a crocodile, swing like a monkey, whatever, because that is where we came from, and it's kind of through the evolutionary tree. And that shouldn't be the because. It should be and we can, and it's going to be a little bit of fun. And you're going to move your joints, your tissues, your body through ranges that you're not normally using, because we're in a relatively non-varied environment, a very sterile movement environment. So anything that encourages to move, to exercise, to use kind of relatively novel ranges, strengths, that's a good thing. And those would be movements that we would be encouraged if we were in a, inverted commas, more natural environment. We would have different challenges. We would be squatting to feed the fire. We'd be squatting to pull the tuber out of the ground. We would be climbing up more trees to catch the nuts, catch the whatever we're climbing up trees to catch. All of those would be a normal events of the day. So I think we should go away from the yes, we should do this because, and the only because is because it's going to be useful for us, not because it's it's evolutionary, blah blah, whatever kind of value that you put on. It's just let's get on and learn how to relearn how to move better. Because once we get beyond childhood, once we get beyond the play is okay stage, we're supposed to grow up, our movement ranges get really quite constrained. So anything that encourages us out of that box, it's going to be a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, and if my dog is quiet, and to the variability concept, I add potential of movement. That's what for us, natural movement is. Let's explore and expose people to the potential of movement that their body it's able to explore, because that's what it is.
Very nice. I like that. Thank you. Yeah, I like that. Not because, but because maybe we can, sort of thing. Yeah, that's good. That cleared it up for me wonderfully. Okay, number 4 or 5, which is kind of linked to it. We've already mentioned that word. It's a beautiful word, which I think all therapists need to bear in mind, is play. So who would like to talk about play? I mean, on the day, we're going to have the wonderful 𝐒𝐸 tester, aren't we, talking about play, which I recommend people go along to. What a fantastic educator, relatively new, or newer than us, because we're just dinosaurs. No, we can't say dinosaurs. But yeah, really fresh. No, we're fresh as well. I don't know. Just go and see 𝐒𝐸, people. It'd be wonderful, 𝐒𝐸. But yeah, play. What's the deal about play then? What's the take on that?
𝐒𝐸 will bring the concept of natural movement that John presents. She's gonna bring it into life by exploring different way of using the natural movement potential or the movement potential into clinical practice. So there are going to be lots of strategies, fun strategies, with a lot of fun games that we can use with our clients to help them to explore. So we use them in clinic within a therapeutic outcome in mind. So with clinical mind, what can we use? So there's going to be a lot of play with, apparently she said, I need to get a lot of pool, what do you call them? The pool
Noodles.
Pool noodles, yes. I don't know why. Lots of pool
Tubbles,
noodles,
called, yeah.
little balls, hula hoops, God knows.
Excellent.
She didn't ask me for a tree though, so that's a positive.
Yeah, and the other part.
Play. What is it about play, Owen, that is so important in rehab and things?
The other part of play that I'm hearing all the way throughout our various conversations other times as well, is that everyone who has the privilege to present at Therapy Expo or really anywhere else, we're daring to play with these dense subjects of anatomy, biomechanics, psychology, philosophy, whatever they happen to be. And so I think play is also a demonstration of daring to fail, or realizing that failure is part of this complex system. We're all going to fail. But actually, failure could very easily, and is very often, a pretty big barrier to daring to play and to mess around with movement. We very quickly, we come away from playing with it as a child. We suddenly go, oh, I've got to behave myself now. I've got to move correctly, whatever the hell that is. Yeah. Now we start to dare to fail. Therefore, we can play with ideas. We can play with movement. We can play with the whole gamut of that kind of interclinical studio, wherever we are, experience.
I love
that. Isn't that great? Dare to fail.
We learn out of knowledge gap. That also in motor skills. Once we realize that we don't have the motor skills, that's where we learn the motor skill, when there is the gap. I love the concept. I absolutely love it.
Very nice. That's good. That's good. There's a t-shirt there somewhere just waiting to be made.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Playing is daring to fail.
Amy is with us. Amy is with us. Amy is in the house.
There we go. Right, and then number 5, which is great, we've got time to talk about briefly,
is Owen. That it's Owen is the critical thinking and
critically.
Questioning.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a little subject to finish with, isn't it? Critical.
Just 2 minutes. Go on.
The critical thinking, clinical reasoning, and that again, it's messing around with ideas, isn't it? And I love it. I mean, it is part of parcel of exactly what should be happening in our clinical reality. One of the big elements of critical thinking is metacognition. Metacognition, a big long fancy word that means thinking about thinking, and that is the reason why we. At the end of our client leaves, we have to sit down and write notes. And people love it or they hate it, but actually it's such a brilliantly useful moment to think about the process that you've just gone through, to think about what could be better, what was worse, what do we miss, all of that piece. And we start to really sort of ultimately ask better questions. Again, it's one of the principles that within Born to Move is trying to get people to ask better questions, to hypothesize, to test that hypothesis, and to retest, and just keep going back and forth through there. And then it becomes this really curious dialogue of playing around with ideas again. Yeah,
and also one of the really good. For me is an underpinning skill on every therapist that is evidence informed. They need to question. I love what you said, the word curiosity and critically thinking, and even critically thinking at evidence-based level, because people sometimes think evidence-informed practice or evidence-based practice is just about following evidence. Oh my God, it's not. It's the hierarchy between clinical evidence, therapist expertise, and client preferences. So, they need to question their own bias, and they need to they need to continuously question where their knowledge is coming from.
Absolutely. So, I mean, just to highlight it to anyone who's listening to this, you know, we keep using this word evidence informed, and that's quite distinct from evidence led. Led suggests it's hierarchical. We're kind of, you know, we're handcuffed and shackled and dragged along by the evidence. Whereas clinical experience is actually driving much of research, and research is informing our clinical application. That's a heterarchical situation of interplays. That's the best case scenario. So there is that distinction, I think, between evidence informed and evidence led.
I love it how, I mean, I remember having a conversation, I think, with Trevor Pryor, podiatrist, once, when I was like trying to say, oh, it's so difficult to change the world. And he was going, but I was thinking, I think I was positive, going, I think I can. But like, for example, I think we all share a fondness for words and how changing a word can make a big difference. But I think some therapists, they're just not turned on by that. Like you just said, the difference between evidence informed and evidence led. And that to me is like, bam, that's so important. If you can appreciate that distinction, then you're going to take away a massive, it's going to be great. But a lot of people just either aren't interested in the difference. They're just saying, oh, you're just playing around with semantics. So it's tricky, isn't it? Because that's one way to turn our audience on and educate them. But some people just aren't into words and they won't appreciate, won't they? So,
but that's okay. Sometimes we have to have certain, it's like with philosophy, not expecting everybody to be interested about philosophy of care, but sometimes somewhere those conversations has to happen, because are those conversations that eventually are going to seep around or are going to, you know, spread, which then are going to inform clinical practice. But surely I couldn't agree more that not everybody will be turned on by them, but somewhere, somehow. And I don't think, and this is another thing why we chose the word heterarchy. Do you remember, we were all a little bit, oh, you know, it's a little bit of a word that might turn people, but actually, no, let's do it, because let's drip feed words to people. Yeah, and actually, let's make those discussions accessible. Because actually, we are making an assumption here that people are not interested. Could it be because people are not interested because the environment where those discussions have been taking place, they've been a little bit more stiff, stifled, and we want to make them accessible.
All right. Really? As soon as those words, whatever the hell we use, if they have meaning, then they make sense, and we're off. How do we get meaning into those words? Is either with more words, if that works, right? Or I would argue better still, with your hands. As soon as your hands go on and you go, oh, that's what I mean by a cranial torsion. It's like, what the cranial torsion? I can explain it in words, but it goes on and on. It's really complex, and it's like, well, too much. Put your hands on, and you go, oh, that's what it is. Got it. You got it in 2 seconds. We need the words for the books, for the dialogues, and to really understand that and give that underpinning. But if it doesn't make sense to your hands, what's the point? So I really want to get that hands-on kind of aspect, and that's what I think, you know, this interplay between that we're always going through within these sort of conferences. You know, lots of words, but now we're getting lots of hands-on hubs and things like that. And that is that interplay. That is that connection between those two places. You know, we're moving on from Descartes'.
But because this is who we are self-selecting again. People that goes to the conference or Therapy Expo, they are self-selecting. We know they already perceive, understand, and make sense of the world and the clinical practice through their hands. So this is why I think it's so important that we create a translation of those concepts.
Yep, great.
I think that was lovely.
I can't shut James up. Go on, James.
Finally, sorry. And what you just said, Anna Maria, in the translation, what I agree, Matt, that some people just don't get excited by the semantics, the niggly-piggly kind of difference between evidence-led and evidence-informed. That's semantics, and some of us get excited by that. What's important is not those words, but the story behind each. And if it's not our responsibility to kind of get people excited about the individual words and the terminology, it's to get people excited about the continuity and the story behind it, and that's the principle. And we've got 5 big words, but we really got 5 principles. We've got 5 stories, and they're really 5 paragraphs within an ongoing story. I think that's the power of what Anna Maria has brought us together to present.
Excellent. Right, I've got a couple of requests, and it's a great idea to finish just to repeat those 5 principles for people listening to the podcast. I would like write them down and just have a little think about them. And if you're going to Therapy Expo, we'll be talking about this with guests coming up between now and Therapy Expo anyway. But yeah, number 1 was heterarchy. Get that into your system. See how many times you can say that tomorrow. It's already feeling more natural the more I say it now, which is wonderful. Number 2 was integrated anatomy. Number 3 was natural movement. Number 4 was play. And number 5 was thinking critically and questioning with curiosity. And yeah, and they are the 5 principles of the story, which we together, led by Anna Maria Mazzieri, believe will help therapists.
Not led, it is a hierarchy project, my dear.
I can't think of another word now, but together with, I don't know what the word is. But yeah, that's going to help link different presentations together and make a little bit more sense to the huge array of real quality stuff which is available at Therapy Expo. And hopefully people there on the day will talk about it. There'll be conversations going on in the hub. There'll be conversations going in the STA Theatre. There'll be conversations with speakers who are involved in this who will be able to use that language with you. So it will also help us chat to each other and learn from each other. So there we go.
Because they underpin practice. It's not all about the stories of those 5 presentations. They underpin practice.
Right then, it's 9:07 people. Thank you very much for those of you who joined us live. And obviously thank you very much to Anna Maria Mazzieri and Owen Lewis and James Earls of Born to Move. It's all very much Therapy Expo driven at the moment, but Owen and James, for example, what have you got? What's Born to Move got coming up at the moment and before then?
Well, next Monday, I'm doing a little webinar. There's going to be a somewhat a sneak peek of the the philosophy of care, the philosophy of touch. So that's happening next Monday. So if you want to join me with that one, there's that. And I know James is running around the world, it sounds like. Last I heard.
So, James?
Tuesday, I fly to Jakarta. I'm doing 2 workshops in Jakarta and then 2 workshops in Singapore. But so if you're listening from out there, then please come along. Details on borntomove.com. And then in December, I'm being graciously hosted by Anna Maria down in Bristol. So I'm looking forward to that, to some functional bodywork, sideline and 4-point kneeling.
Wonderful. We'll give links to all these in the show notes. And Anna Maria, I mean, you've got loads going on, but give us 10 of the 20 things you're doing tomorrow.
Well, it's just at the moment, life is taken a little bit by putting together the Therapy Expo, the hands-on hub diary, which is quite intense at the moment. But we have several courses. So I'm running an online workshop next week on evidence-informed practice for hands-on massage therapists. Then we have Ben Cormack actually coming in December to Exeter, bringing in his therapeutic movement and lower back pain. Then we have oncology, pregnancy, and sorry, I forgot that. Listen, come and listen to me at Therapy Expo talking about the several of them, but the one I'm really excited about. Well, I'm excited about all of them, but the deep touch. So the evidence and why we find the clients to like the little bit more of a deep touch. There is some emerging evidence. I am really interested. I'm part of I'm part of a group called ForceNet that they international group. They do quite a lot of research on force-based mechanisms, and there is some really nice research coming up. And actually today, another of the paper I was involved with has come out, which I'm really excited. It was led by Chad Cook, and it's a paper on gap in evidence or in research, where in manual therapy we should be focusing our research on. So I'm not going to say what the results of the study was, but have a look at it as well. I'll put the link.
Amazing, congratulations, great. Fantastic. Right, so there we go. So much happening inside and outside of Therapy Expo. We'll put all links to websites and things. If anything in there is of interest to listeners, then make sure you check out the show notes, which is probably easiest. I do add them to YouTube eventually, but they definitely appear on Podbean and host the podcast, and also at the STA.co.uk. It just leaves me now to say what is. Oh, and if you want to follow Twitter and Instagram, you've got _Born2Move on both, and on Facebook you'll find them as well. And then Anna Maria, like I say, is at the ST School across all accounts. And then you've got the stschool.co.uk. Right then, that's it. Over time. Sorry to keep you. Next episode of the Sports Therapy Association podcast is actually going to be at 9 o'clock. It's an hour later, just so baby's sleeping, because we're going to be talking to Sonia Fierro of Recover Stronger. How could I say no? She needs a time when the baby's at least having a kip. So she's going to be talking to us. For those of you who don't know Sonia, fantastic osteopath, against evidence-informed therapist of Recover Stronger. Sonia's going to be in the STA Theatre at Therapy Expo on day 1 at 2:30 as part of the Women in Sports Therapy panel, which Anna Maria is going to be present as well, along with Fiona Higgs and Michelle Lyons. And then on the Thursday, Sonia's going to be talking about doing a presentation at 11:30 on the Thursday, functional flexibility, which will be really interesting because the whole flexibility stretching thing has evolved nicely since what I and other people were saying 10 years ago. Sometimes it's swinging a bit too far one way, but Sonia's going to nail it and tell us all about where we are at the moment with regards to evidence-informed flexibility and training. So that will be with Sonia Fierro next week on YouTube at the later time of 9 o'clock.
And she's Italian.
And of course, yeah, as well. Not just Italian, she's also like world deadlift record holder for a weight or something. So like strong.
The Italian is better.
How are they doing tonight, by the way, Anna Maria? I'm not into football, but I'm going to make it sound as if I am. Are you keeping a track of the score? No, not interested.
I'm not into football. It's the wrong shaped ball for me.
Right, if you guys can stick around, Anna Maria, Owen and James, I'm just going to shut down the live lounge. Thank you everyone for joining us again. Thank you for your comments. Nikki Mansfield has said, I know I'm biased. That's always great to know. It's critical thinking. Because you guys are four of my favourite people in our entire profession. Well, you've got good taste, what can I say, Nikki? But what an episode. Fantastic. Tracy Stevens says, well done, Anna Maria. Very exciting about the paper, which is, yeah, definitely very true, very exciting. And Tracy says, thanks, everyone. See you at the Expo. So thanks, everyone who joined us. Hopefully some of you will join us live next Tuesday at a later time, 9 o'clock. Until then, goodbye from all of us, and take care of each other. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.